Okay, good. Then let's go. Welcome everybody to this technical discussion about Flux and Codenvy, and I think the topic is about syncing. So before we get started, um, three announcements again to everybody. Keep your mic muted if you do not speak. That keeps the background noise down. Second is this call is being recorded and live broadcasted to us, and will be published on YouTube afterwards. So be careful what you say, and don't look stupid or things like that. It's all going to be public. Third thing is please redistribute the URL to everybody who's interested, or is on the invite list. If someone is missing, let me know. Okay, those are the three announcements up front. And then we can. I think we should start the session with a very, very, very short and brief introduction round. Is that okay with you? I hope so. I will just quickly start. I'm Martin. I co-lead the Eclipse Flux project and invented some of the technologies and implemented the prototype. And I think we will chat about the syncing mechanism in today's call. Next one, Son.
Yes, I'm. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I'm Santan. I'm a project lead from a cereal company in France, and we are working for Codenvy to build the Eclipse plugin. We use sync, maybe the Flux sync mechanism, and other plugins like the data source and AngularJS plugin.
Okay, Alex, want to go next?
So hi, my name is Alex Boyko. I'm working with Pivotal, with Martin and Andy, Chris, and Niraj. I think only Martin is on the call, but myself, I'm integrating Flux into Orion, creating the plugin for Orion to have goodies from Flux. So that's me.
Okay, great. Vitaly, want to go next?
Hi, my name is Vitaly. I'm team lead of Codenvy ID and SDK project. So we work on the core API for ID and SDK. No.
Okay, great. Thank you. Stefan, want to go next? One of those two.
Okay, I take. So my name is Stéphane Davier. I work, put the video on. I work on the Codenvy Eclipse plugin with Kevin Paulet. And in fact, it's Tyler who point us to Flux for our syncing problems, in fact, to sync a local project with remote one. Okay. Next one.
Okay, the other, Stefan?
Hi, so my name is Stéphane Lemeur. I'm working for Codenvy and I'm a product manager of the IDE itself.
Great, thank you. Michael, want to go next?
Hi, I'm Michael Leduc. I'm working with Sun as part of Sun's team on the data source plugin for Codenvy as part of the Sally team.
Okay, great, thank you. Kevin?
Hi, my name is Kevin Paulet. I'm working on the Eclipse plugin for Codenvy, and I'm working for
Looks like you're muted again. Can you repeat, Kevin?
Hi. My name is Kevin Paulet. I'm working on the Eclipse plugin for Serly and for Codenvy.
Okay, great, thank you. And Florent, is that pronounced correctly? I hope so.
I'm working also on Codenvy. I'm working on support of AngularJS plugin, and I'm Syrian, so I work for Sally.
Okay, great. So thank you guys for the introduction. I think the goal for today's call is to, as far as I understood, Sun, who maybe dropped off the call, hope he joins later again, is to understand the mechanism that we have at the moment in place in Flux for doing syncing, as far as I understood. So my suggestion would be to let me explain how the prototype stuff that we have in Flux is working and how that is designed, if that is okay, as a first step, and then we can chat about what do you guys would like to do. Can we build up something that's common across those projects and some kind of a common core for syncing things. Does it make sense to you?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So I'll try to give you a very brief overview about the syncing mechanism that we have in Flux today. The syncing mechanism in Flux has two different levels. One level is it tries to keep files in sync. So there can be multiple places where files are stored, like in your Eclipse workspace, in the cloud somewhere, wherever that could be, somewhere in the world, and there's a mechanism that is trying to keep those files in sync. So whenever one of those files changes, like you type something in, you press save, the file is stored on disk, it tries to keep those files in sync. That's one level. The second level is the second level of the syncing mechanism is some kind of live edit syncing. So you can say, I edit this file, so whenever I type something into the editor, all those edits while you're typing are synced across all the participants in this kind of editing session. This is a little bit like collaborative editing, like Google Docs or so, but it is kind of built on top of the same technical foundation. So those are the two levels that we have in Flux at the moment. The first level, keeping files in sync, that's built because we try to synchronize those files, and we try to say, if you're working in Eclipse, you can work with the same files. If you work in a web editor, you can have the same files. If you're working, you can access your workspace or your projects from a totally different location, and you can access the same files. You can change the same files, right? That's the purpose of the let's say the syncing mechanism on the file level. The second level, the live edit or the real-time syncing, that is being built for services that are running inside the cloud who want to do something while you are typing. So that is built, for example, if you are inside a web editor and you type something into your editor as Java, like Java code. Those typing events and those typing changes are being synced with, for example, a cloud service, and this cloud service is doing something with your edits, like it's doing reconciling, compilation, whatever. So the service that's running inside the cloud, it cannot just operate on the file because you are live editing and changing the file content in the editor without pressing save. So it needs to do this kind of real-time sync. The same is true for the service that can do content assist or some other stuff for you. And they all need to operate on the changed, let's say, the buffer data inside the editor, not the saved file, not the stored file, but the live edit file, lively edited file. That's why we have those two different levels in Flux being built into the syncing mechanism. Technically, Okay, so that's just the purpose, right? That's just the purpose of why do we have these two levels, and what are those two levels, right? And it doesn't really matter who is interested in what level. Everybody that is participating in the syncing mechanism can say, okay, I'm interested in the file syncing stuff. I'm interested in the live edit syncing stuff. I want to take care of live editing. I want to take care of file editing, or I want to take care of both. So it's up to every participant who want to join in what kind of level, in what kind of syncing level, right? Okay, so that's the first intro. The second, if I go down from the technical implementation point of view, how this is all working under the hood is that we do not have something like a REST API or a master or a server in place that stores let's say, the master data. It is a protocol between all participants instead. Like it's more in the style of a peer-to-peer communication or a group communication. All the participants who are interested in syncing files or exchanging these live editing events, all those guys, all those participants, they exchange messages over an asynchronous messaging channel. Whatever that technically is doesn't really matter at the moment. It's kind of WebSocket stuff, but you can imagine everything, right? You can MQTT or whatever. It doesn't matter. From the architectural point of view, the thing that matters is they are exchanging asynchronous messages or messages in an asynchronous way. So whenever some of those guys is changing a file, for example, it is sending out a message, it's broadcasting a message to all the other guys, and everybody can say, oh, I'm interested in that, I'm not interested in that. If someone's doing a live edit thing like typing, that guy sends out a message distributing or broadcasting that message to everybody else saying, I do these I'm lively changing this file and I did X, Y, Z to it. So all the other guys can listen to that and say, oh, I'm interested in that as well. So they can react to the message. But there is no REST API that you call if you want to do something, and you get something back or some kind of push information back to the other client saying, oh, someone did changed it. It's just a group of, let's say, participants who are equally exchanging messages among each other to keep files in sync and to exchange these live edits. That's the kind of the overview of the technical implementation at the moment. This technical implementation is based on exchanging these messages, and these messages are at the moment JSON messages over a WebSocket bus or WebSocket channel. The WebSocket stuff doesn't really matter, as I said, and the format of the messages is also not very important, but in the end it's just exchanging JSON objects, JSON messages over the wire, broadcasting those things to everybody else or sending information back to one guy. That means there is no REST API, as I said, so there's no formal API for that defined at the moment. There is some kind of informal API because you need to understand those messages, so you need to interpret them, and you need to send out those messages in the right format, right? Those messages are being exchanged forth and back. Everybody needs to understand the messages, so that's kind of the protocol that is in place for keeping files in sync and doing other stuff. Everything else in Flux, like content assist, navigation, all the additional features, they are also built on top of these asynchronous messaging system, or these asynchronous exchanging messages in an asynchronous way. But that's kind of independent of the file syncing because that's all built on top, right? So I think that is not that important for our call today. I think the important question is how is the messaging thing being implemented? Because as far as I understood, our goal is to try to think about what you guys want to do you're the Codenvy guys. What do you want to do for syncing files, syncing workspace stuff? What do we want to do in Flux, and can we build something out of that that is some kind of a unique mechanism for that? Okay, so far so good. Or I can go down in the technical implementation detail one level more down if you want, but up to here, does it sound reasonable to you? Does it make sense?
Yes, you can go down. It's all good for now.
Any important questions at the moment?
No, thank you for the introduction. In fact, it was very interesting, and the abstraction, the explanation of the abstraction you say now very clear. So I think that would be great if on our side we can also explain what we did and what our mechanism we have currently in place. So maybe Stefan or Kevin, you can explain the plugin that you did. It will highlight most of the features that we have in place, and probably see which points we can converge together and see all the opportunities for all of us.
Kevin, if you like, I can. I put my camera back. So, in fact, as said before, we are developing an Eclipse plugin to import and export projects to a Codenvy repository. The question now is how can we deal with the small deltas that we should retrieve and send to the Codenvy repository. It's why Flux is perfectly good candidate, because it's deal with that. In fact, you said that there is no master, but it's an architectural question, so not really important in our case. So, for instance, imagine you have checkouted a project from Codenvy in your Eclipse on your local hard drive. You have made some modifications of some files. The question is how you reconcile those modifications with the remote files. In the same time, another person could have sent its modification. So in the first time, we have thought on something about something like a Git mechanism with a classic push, pull, and merge conflict resolution. But Tyler has speak us about Flux, and from what you tell at the start of this meeting, it seems this could we could handle those mechanisms of reconciliation with the protocol, with this kind of technology.
So basically, what we have for now in our plugin with our Eclipse Codenvy plugin is that we are able to connect to the user account of Codenvy and import projects and work of the workspace of a user inside a workspace on Eclipse. So we have some sync mechanism between the local workspace on that has been copied into Eclipse and the workspace that is cloud on Codenvy. So the work that we have currently is not allowing multiple collaboration on the same project at the same time at this moment, and we think that Flux can help us to do this kind of features as well. So maybe, oops. Maybe that will be interesting if we can discuss a little bit about how the system is built, especially on the messaging protocol. That seems very interesting to understand correctly, to see in which way we will be able to integrate and implement the protocol as well.
Did I understand that correctly, that these kind of the syncing, what I described as the first level, keeping files in sync across different locations, like your Eclipse plugin and your Codenvy workspace, that's already being implemented?
Not really. Not really.
Okay.
Not really. We have a part of it. We have the global checkout. We have file level push and pull for files that are pre-existing in the Codenvy repository. For now, new files in the local Eclipse project, we cannot push those files. And the big point is that we don't have made a model of that can give us a status of like when you make a git status of which file is good to take remotely, which file is to push remotely, on which file is in conflict. If you see what I mean. We are just operating in a overwrite way. You take your file, you say push this file, and it's overwrite the file on Codenvy, or you take a file, you say pull this file, and it's overwrite your file. It overwrites your file locally. So there is nothing in relation with what you describe about Flux. It's far from this.
And are you interested in these while you're typing live syncing as well, or is it just on you're storing a file?
In fact, there's two steps. As Tyler said before, the goal for now is to have rapidly something working with all those syncing features, but not the collaborative one. But in fact, the key is that if we based the syncing mechanism on the bad technology, perhaps it will be very costly to put the collaboration side after. So it's why we're interested in Flux, because perhaps it could give us the better of both worlds, both syncing files a la Git, and getting live collaboration-like mechanism.
Okay, understand. Before we continue, welcome John to the call. just to let you know, this is being recorded and being published on YouTube afterwards. So I think I should just let you know that. So it will be publicly available.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you fine.
Okay. It's telling me my microphone is not working, so I wasn't sure. Great.
Oh, that's great. Want to quickly introduce yourself to all the other guys?
Okay, sure. So I'm John Arthorn. I work on the Orion project mostly. So I'm the lead of the Orion server, and I'm also a co-lead with Martin on Flux. Although I've only just getting started with it. I guess that's it for a basic introduction.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So far, I gave a brief introduction about how the Flux mechanism is being built, in terms of what is it all for, right? The file syncing and the live edit syncing. Why do we have that, and how does it work from a very overview point of view? And Stefan explained what is in Codenvy and what they are trying to do, or what they would like to benefit from. So
right. It sounds like, from what I'd heard of what the Codenvy Eclipse plugin was doing, it sounds exactly the same as the file syncing in Flux. So maybe they don't have the live edit syncing, or they don't have a need for the live edit syncing, but the file syncing sounds exactly like the file syncing in Flux.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, very related. Let's say the downside of the Flux technology at the moment is that we do not have a full implementation in place, right? A rock solid full implementation of the syncing mechanism. The stuff that we built into the prototype is also more or less for demonstration purposes, I must say. So it's not a rock-solid file syncing implementation at all at the moment. It works nicely for the prototype code, it works nicely for demonstration purposes, but it's not production code, and it is also not dealing with kind of conflict resolution at the moment and things like that. In the sense of if you're just doing these file syncing mechanism, it is not recognizing conflict. So if people are changing the same file in different places, and they're syncing it later on the file syncing mechanism, it's a little bit like what you described as well, like the last guy who writes the file, that guy wins. So it is some kind of a very basic implementation at the moment. The plan is, of course, to implement in Project Flux something that is kind of a rock-solid file syncing implementation for that. That's one thing. The second thing is the collaborative editing that is built at the moment into Flux is also just a prototype implementation, right? It's a very simple implementation based on exchanging deltas while you're typing, and it's not yet doing something like operational transforms or differential synchronization for keeping different edits in sync all over the place if they happen in parallel. So technically it will be very easy to kind of confuse the Flux mechanism at the moment if you're really doing live edits on the same file at the same time from different locations, which is not the main purpose of Flux to do that, but the mechanism in place should do that. And we thought a lot about how to implement that. So I think we have a good understanding of what should be done there, but we haven't done it. So just to let you know that you do not expect from Flux say, oh, that's all ready, you just need to grab the code and go.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would be very happy if that would be the case. And I would be very proud of that, but it's not there yet, right? So that's one of the goals for Flux, is to actually build that part and to implement that. And I would be very happy to collaborate with you guys to actually do that, because I think we have a good understanding what's necessary for Flux, and it sounds like especially the file syncing stuff is exactly what you need and what you would like to do for the Eclipse plugin as well, in some kind of on a better level. And open up the door for collaborative editing might be useful for you as well. Is that correct from your point of view?
Yeah. It's really nice, and moreover, we will be happy to collaborate as well on the project if it's possible. If there is things that are missing, you said that it's not yet production ready. On our side, our target is to go to production. So maybe it's also a good opportunity to have a real use case, in a real life use case, where we can do also some pull requests to have it more productization ready, maybe. I don't know. But it's really interesting to think on the basis you have, and I think the first level of Flux is very interesting indeed.
Okay. Yeah.
On the collaboration, it's something that we are also working on our side. We had an implementation of this feature in our previous version, but in the version that we are building, we don't have this at this moment. We don't have this ready. So maybe it's also an opportunity to discuss about that, especially if you work on the way you know how you want to build it. I think it can be very interesting to discuss a little bit deeper on that. Maybe you have some specification written somewhere that you can point us.
No. To be honest, we don't have a written formal specification for that.
Okay.
But the goal could be that we quickly walk through bits and pieces of the code, or I show you parts of the code, so that you can maybe take a look at that, what's there, and try to familiarize yourself with the Flux implementation at the moment, and we can have a more technical discussion, I don't know, in a week or two, about what needs to be done and what you would like to do on that code base, maybe, or on a different code base.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Cool.
Could we ask some questions?
Sure. Yeah. Always.
Sun, tell me offline. Tell me to talk about an offline mode. In fact, when you're working with your laptop on a project, development project, you can expect some offline time. For example, in the train, where you off and you keep working on modifying file. Is it something in the scope of Flux, how Flux can reconcile all modifications done between the last online time and when you plug in a new time, also offline time, you have made modification. Oh, this is done by Flux.
The thing is, we may have developers that would like to, if there's any conflicts, to deal with the conflicts themselves.
For instance, if someone has changed anything, and if I'm a developer, I'm already changing the same file, but not the same, exactly the same thing. I want to be able to say, okay, what's the difference between what has done the other guys and what I want to push back into and push in and share with the others. So the question is, would Flux be able to deal with that kind of situation?
I think there's one important thing I should mention about Flux is that the syncing idea behind Flux and why we implement that is we still have the view of it is not for team collaboration, really. It is not replacing Git. It's not replacing version control. So if I and John, if we are both working on the same project and we have the same stuff checked out from Git, and I sync my stuff or connect my stuff to Flux so that I can access my workspace from all over the world, and John is doing the same, we are sharing. We are not sharing anything, right? I sync my stuff with Flux. John is syncing his stuff with Flux, and we are not working in one space, right? So it is different from Google Docs. Like you have one document, and everybody is changing the one document, right? So for the basic file syncing mechanism, I'm changing my files in Flux. John is changing his files in Flux. Maybe even they are kind of the similar files because they are checked out from the same Git repository, but they are separate in Flux. Right? So if we want to exchange our changes, we would still go back to, oh, I commit stuff to Git, John has commit his stuff to Git, and we use Git for contract resolution or for collaborating on kind of in terms of exchanging those file changes or changed code or whatever. So we are not replacing Git or replacing version control with Flux. I think that's one kind of fundamental idea why we do not think too much about you're doing changes, I'm doing changes, so I store changes to my file, John is storing changes to his file, and now Flux needs to kind of merge those changes. Because that should not happen, because it's still built, let's say, on a different level than the Git version control. That said, means for the live edit thing, because I would like to live edit my file, and I would like to sync those live edits with services that are running inside the cloud, those live edits are as well only my live edits, right? They are not live edits with everybody in the world. But of course, I could do something like I send John my URL to my file, so that John is able to join my edit session and is editing the same file at the same time, like Google Docs. But in that case, we are editing my file together, right? So if John leaves the session,
you could still have some code. You could still have some synchronization issues there, right? I mean, if you, let's say you implement code formatting by calling something in some service in the cloud, and then while it's running, you edit the file, you forget that it's running or something. You know, I think it's actually pretty easy to get in situations where you have self-conflicts. But those would be, I think, the most important thing there is detecting that that's happened and doing things like e-tags to make sure you don't overwrite something you weren't aware. Something changed since the last time you loaded it, then you should get an error when you try to write it, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit simpler problem. Like it's more protection against conflicts, protection against accidental overwrite as opposed to doing anything like a three-way diff or merge.
I think I would do that for the file syncing thing. For these, you keep files in sync, like you store a file and things like that. I would do exactly that. And for the real-time edits, like while you're typing, and the service is doing something for you, and you still do typing in the same typing session, I think I would do something like which is not built into the prototype yet, but I think we should do, is doing something like operational transforms or differential synchronization, which is the mechanism behind Google Docs, so that 2 or 3 or 5 million people can edit the same stuff at the same time, and that those different edits from all over the place are being kept in sync, which is different from the UC tech thing, right? So just my idea at the moment. And I think there are these two technical things that we could use for that, like operational transforms, which I think is the mechanism behind Google Docs, and differential synchronization, which is a different thing, which can also be very useful to do exactly that.
So with operational transforms, you're sharing a description of a change, and then those are getting reconciled by each recipient?
Yeah, the basic idea for operational transforms is you are exchanging the kind of the deltas, or these let's say the actions, like I added those 5 characters at this point. It's a little bit like the change event that you get from text editor model, or you remove 5 characters from this location, something like these, more or less a more atomic operation. So exchanging those operations, and there's a mechanism in place where you modify the operations on the other side to make it fit into the model, right? So that it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't matter if 2 guys are collaborating. One guy is inserting text at the beginning, and the other guy is inserting text at the end. In the end, it doesn't matter in what sequence you execute those changes. Those changes are being modified on the other side in a way that they match together.
Sure, as long as they can be reconciled automatically, right?
As long as they can be reconciled automatically, and if they are kind of in conflict, and the conflict could not be resolved, like that guy is deleting everything and pasting something totally different in there, and the other guy is doing exactly the same, then there is, I think, some kind of default mechanism in place, like if this happens at exactly the same point in time, there's some kind of default fallback, like in that case you always do X, like the first guy wins or something like that, which is, I think, the same stuff that's happening in Google Docs, but this situation should be very unlikely, right?
Right, sure.
And to me, it feels like the Google Docs stuff is working good enough to do this. And the other thing is differential synchronization, which is based on these diff and patch algorithms that exists for text files or for binary files or for whatever. So you are more or less keeping kind of a shadow document. Everybody keeps a shadow document, and you are diffing your changes against the shadow document, and you're receiving diffs, and you're applying those diffs by patching your document. Some kind of in a smart way to keep things in sync, which is interesting for keeping, for example, binary files in sync, because the algorithm does not describe what algorithm should be used for diffing and patching. So you can use one algorithm for text files for diffing and patching, and you can use another one for binary files, which could be interesting for syncing binary files if you want, because you would not. You could also do this kind of just sending deltas around, right? If you have a good diff and patch algorithm.
You're sending deltas in terms of some common some state of the document that is known to both parties.
I think so. I think I haven't understood all the details, but from what I understood is there is you have your, let's say, your buffer that you edit, and you have a shadow document. So you edit your buffer, and you're diffing against the shadow.
Oh, right. Okay, I see.
You send that around, and whenever you receive something, you can figure out, okay, what's the difference here? What's the difference for your shadow document? So you're applying that to the shadow document. You're in that case keeping that in sync again.
Got it. I see. And
it's a little like that.
Next step. Persist their change, their shadow. They finally persist their change and update, and all the other parties update their shadow documents. Anyway, probably getting into too much detail.
Yeah, some guys at Pivotal are playing a little bit around with it, and from what I've seen, those the smarter the diff and the smarter the patch algorithm is, the better the syncing is, right? And there are very intelligent algorithms now out there for doing that stuff for textual files. So what I've seen is quite impressive results for doing that stuff, even for resolving conflicts that you would say, what the hell? How should that be synchronized? I have no idea. But even in that case, it's like, well, that result makes sense. So it could be interesting to do that in opposite to operational transforms, which I don't know. And for the offline case, which I think was the question at the beginning, at least from what I know from operation transforms, is if you want to do the offline case for real-time editing, it gets more and more complicated. You can record those changes while you're offline, so these atomic changes while you're offline, and then sending them in bulk around, and getting others in bulk from other participants if they've done changes in parallel. But resolving that stuff gets more and more complicated, right? You could end up in more and more default resolutions for this live editing thing.
Yes, you have more material to merge, so more potential conflicts.
But I think it's and that's at least my hope for Flux is that since this is kind of single user system, right? More or less.
Yes.
These conflicts do mostly occur if you do this real-time changes, and a service goes offline, service comes back online later, and I'll keep editing stuff. It should not happen all the time that 5 different parties are saving and storing the same file, being offline all the time, and then they try to merge again. Because that would mean that, I don't know, I'm offline, and I'm editing my file in my web editor, and I'm editing the same file in another web editor, and I'm editing the same file on my Eclipse workspace. And when I'm online again, I try to merge everything together, which would be kind of, I hope not a very likely situation, because it is not on the same level as Git, right? In Git, you have, or in these kind of version control system, of course, you have that stuff all the time. Like, people are changing the same file, they're storing changes. Another one, someone else is changing the same file at the same time, and now we have this kind of merge conflict. But since I think we do not try to solve the Git level, the version control level questions.
That totally makes sense. And from what I'd heard of Codenvy, that sounds like the model there too.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if Stefan or anyone wants to comment, but my impression was the same, where in Codenvy, users have their own private workspaces and they're not doing live, pair programming kind of models. Is that true?
Sorry, John. Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Oh, we're just saying, like in Flux, we're viewing essentially that each user has their own private workspace that they're doing their coding in, and it's not a case where you're doing live collaborative editing like with Google Docs. But I thought the same was true of Codenvy, where if you're sharing stuff with a team, it's by doing delivering it to SCM and sharing it that way, as opposed to doing a live shared editing.
Yeah.
Like Codenvy user has their own private workspace, right?
Yeah, correct. But you can also invite other developers inside of your workspace or inside one of your projects, and you can provide them some privileges or some permissions, where they will also be able to edit your projects, and you can get a multi-developer collaborating session, a peer-to-peer. you can be on the same file and editing the file with multiple developers, in fact.
Oh,
Or
okay. You do have that mode. So, and what kind of technology do you have for handling conflicts in that today?
so this is at this moment it's also something that we are looking to improve. We had that in our previous version, but currently in the next version, it's something that we want to rework deeply to improve and add some features like the ability to manage conflicts, the ability to manage multi cursor as well. This kind of things needs to be improved and had. But at this moment, we are still investigating to know which will be the best solution to implement this feature.
Okay. So that's interesting. So I mean, and I think even though, like from the Orion point of view, even today we don't have that same model where you have multiple users having simultaneous editing on the same workspace, the same files. That's something that everyone asks about when you talk about web IDEs. You know, whenever we've demoed Orion, there's often a question: do you support this live collaborative editing, pair programming? And it's an obvious thing to ask for when you're in a web IDE world. So
yeah.
I think even for us, it's interesting to, if we had mechanisms to support that, I think it would, in the long term, be interesting too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have some question actually about the Codenvy today and what requirements you might have. So when I've been looking into the file level synchronization in Orion, and one of the issues we have there is in Eclipse it's pretty easy to capture the changes because there is this in-memory model and there's resource deltas that are sent, and any plugin can get a summary of all changes, and there's also quite a high performance refresh operation where you can synchronize that model against the file system. So in the Eclipse world, it's pretty easy to do that synchronization, but like in Orion and in Codenvy, what if someone is running some external tool, like they running, they're in a Docker shell and they run some command line tool that edits their files? How do you get awareness of those changes? You know what I mean? So if changes are made by calling the Codenvy file APIs, get and put actual files, then you immediately know about it. But if there are processes running on the server at the file system level that edit things, how do you become aware of those, or do you have that today? So for example, a build runs, how do you capture what was changed by the build?
So basically what we are doing is that we have on our infrastructure at the root level we have the virtual file system, and all events are triggered from and to the virtual file system. Then when you do a build, what happens is that we have a builder, a cloud builder that is running the build for the developer, and we publish that the result of the build inside of a file, another virtual file system that is used only between the builder and the runner. So if you have an application that needs to be updated inside of your Docker runner instance, for example, we will mount a virtual drive, and we will push the source on this on this drive, and with and the runner will, the Docker container will be able to connect to this drive and get notification about changes in this drive. So this is how we can do the live reload, for example.
Okay, so every single change goes through the virtual file system API, and that's the level where you can capture that information and report events.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, because our current thing in Orion, so we have not everything is virtualized in Orion because we want to be able to support you running native tools on the server that we might not even be aware of what they're doing. And we're currently considering an approach of essentially we do a best effort synchronization in that any change that is made via our API, or our Orion file API, we obviously know about that and we can record events and we can do synchronization. But then there are things that escape us because they were done natively, and we would have to do a periodic synchronization, like a kind of a deeper, slower synchronization with the file system to capture any changes that we missed, essentially. Which isn't super satisfying, but it's I don't see the alternative if you want to be actually be able to the alternative is saying that the only way you're allowed to change this workspace is by calling our virtual file system API. Feels a bit limiting in that the existing third-party tools you might want to run on your project today wouldn't support that. But maybe I might have misunderstood. Maybe what you're saying is that's actually happening kind of below the OS level. So you're actually mounting a file system at the OS level that is implemented in terms of your virtual file system API.
I didn't get exactly what you were saying. I think the sound quality was a little bit tricky. Sorry.
Okay, I'll try again. So, is it true that every change must be made by calling your virtual file system API, or can a native tool be just be manipulating the OS file system and that's actually a mounted virtual file system?
No. You have to connect to the virtual file system yeah. So
okay.
Basically, if you want to, we have APIs for the virtual file system as well, and if you want to connect another tool to integrate with our VFS file system, with our virtual file system, you have to use our APIs for that. So that's the only way at this moment. But we can think about other way to do that. Maybe the way we did for the builder and the runner could also be extended to work on this same way. But at this moment, we only have APIs. So yeah.
Okay, but so you don't allow, like, let's say someone wants to run some arbitrary third-party tool against your workspace contents, like they want to run an ant build or run npm or some existing thing that doesn't know anything about your virtual file system. Can that run today, or it has to be ported to run against your virtual file system?
No, it cannot be run directly against our virtual file system. So we are not allowing that directly at this moment.
Okay.
So the way would be to get the sources from the API and run that locally if you want to run an npm command, for example.
Run it locally. You mean like, you mean on a desktop? You mean, or?
It depends on your tool as well. But maybe Florent work on an AngularJS plugin, and we are allowing npm commands. But what we are doing is that we are taking the sources and we are running npm commands directly on the server. But I'm really not sure about the way it has been done, and I think maybe Florent can explain a little bit more deeper.
Yeah, if we detect that we have some packaged JSON file or bower.json file, we are downloading all the files and we send back all the files on the repository, but only for bower. The npm dependencies are only set for the runner part. So the npm dependencies are not sent back to the source repository, because we only need these dependencies for the run part.
Right. Okay, I understand that. But I don't know. Like, do you get what I mean? Though, like what we're trying to be able to support in Orion is like allowing the user to open, like a shell, like a bash shell against their files in the workspace, run arbitrary tools that are available in that Docker container against those files, and then we have to discover what changes those tools made. So I was thinking for that kind of scenario, we need to do essentially a fairly slow synchronization where we do a diff of the whole subtree or project they're working on and discover what changes were made so that we can report them back to, Eclipse or whatever the tool you have that you're running.
Yeah, we may have the problem with the Yeoman tool, which allow you to generate some stuff. So we have to find which code has been generated.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's always going to be like that. If you introduce some abstraction, all the existing tools in the world don't run against that abstraction. So you need some kind of solution for all those tools out there, right, that are already running at the OS, that are just running it as native apps or whatever. Anyway, so that's the kind of thinking I had right now in Orion, is that we would have a best effort synchronization based on the changes that are made at our API level, and those we could report immediately, and then we would have to do this deeper, slower synchronization for changes made by external tools. So anyway, that's the state we're at in thinking about it from the Orion point of view.
Okay. Great. So Martin, you will send us some pointer to the code of Flux, and we will investigate. We will give a look on that and see if there are some opportunities for us to reuse the work that has been done, and maybe collaborate as well on this project. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. And the question is, should I give you a few pointers now on the code, or should we have a separate session on walking a bit through the code? What do you prefer?
I think you can send us your links to the code, and we can plan another session where we will discuss a little bit more about it, or we may have some questions. We may be able to move forward a little bit faster if we can investigate that before the session?
Yeah, okay, that totally makes sense. So I can. What about letting me send around an email to the Flux Dev mailing list, and I will summarize links and pointers and a few more explanations about. Oh, if you're interested in the syncing mechanism, you should take a look at this file, this code. This is doing X. This is doing Y. So sending around maybe a more. Not just 5 links in an email, but some explanations around that. What is
Sounds
this
very
file
nice.
for? What is this thing? Something like that. Maybe a brief overview, not talking about every line of code,
Yeah, sure.
but giving you some kind of hint based on the stuff that I described in this call, so that you can take a look at that, and then we have a follow-up call, chatting about more questions, or you can write questions to the Flux Dev mailing list, and we can have a follow-up call later on to discuss further steps and further collaboration.
Sounds perfect for us. I think we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh yeah. I'm very much looking forward to the collaboration. I'm very excited about that. So that would be awesome. Then I don't have to do all the work on my own, so that's good. Or we. Not just myself, of course. Sounds good. So I will do that. Any more issues and questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one quickly to either you or Alex about the integration that you did with that Alex did with Orion and Flux. Is it on the topic of synchronization? I just looked at the code quickly, and I saw the live edit synchronization, but is it also doing file synchronization or just the live edit right now?
In terms of file synchronization, it's just the creation and deletion. There is also I need to do the copy, the move. I think that will be it. That will be the story for synchronization for now. But yeah, creation deletions are there.
Okay, I must have missed that. So
load as well. Sorry.
Okay, because we're actually currently working on at the file synchronization level, basically sending events for every kind of file system level change, like creations, deletions, edits, moves, copies, everything. So there's a bug with a patch. Maybe I'll send a link on the Flux mailing list. So it's not going to. Unfortunately, we're doing a release this week, so it won't get into that release. So it'll be shortly afterwards. But that hopefully gives us a more powerful mechanism for the file level, for the file synchronization stuff.
Yeah, I think the stuff that Alex did is implementing the file system API and just re-implementing that based on Flux. And therefore, all the files that are read and stored from this file system are more or less directly put on this messaging channel for getting the content of files from Flux somewhere and storing changes somewhere, things like that. So that's as far as I understood.
Oh, it's not that there isn't an Orion workspace separate.
Right. It's at the moment it's not what we talked about before. It's not this kind of the agent that sits aside of the server-side workspace that is keeping the workspace in sync with someone. We tried the other thing first, saying we do a client-side file system plugin, and this client-side file system plugin that you can choose in your Explorer kind of or Navigator thing, so you can switch to the Flux file system, and that is not storing anything anywhere. It is just communicating over the message channel with Flux, getting the files, the file structure, and the project content from somewhere around the world, in quotes. So from some other guy inside Flux connecting to this messaging thing, and the same for storing changes, as far as I understood.
Oh, okay, so there isn't really much of a file synchronization issue there then, because there's only one system. There's only one source of truth, which is if you have Eclipse file system, that's where everything's coming from.
Yeah, it is. I think it's kind of syncing stuff as well, but the channel back is not working, right? So if this file system API plugin, or this file system plugin for Orion is getting a message for someone else changed the file, whoever that is, right? Someone else changed the file. It cannot let the UI know that this file changed or the structure change or new file arrived, which is, I think, some of the updating issue. But aside of that, there is not a single source of truth for the file. Since in Flux we do not have this kind of single source of truth, or the single place where files are stored. It could be that everything is inside the cloud repository. All the files are stored there, somewhere in the cloud, and the Orion client plugin is communicating with these cloud repository.
Right. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
And with the Eclipse plugin repository as well, or they can both change. Guys can change stuff, or another web editor can change the file. So that would also be pushed back to the Orion client file system plugin. But I think the missing piece is, from what I understood from Alex, is that when something is changed from outside, the file system plugin is not able to let Orion know about that change.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I understand that issue. Okay. Well, I'll definitely take a look at it in more detail and try it out. I've only had a chance for a quick look so far.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
And the live edit thing is just built on in addition to that, right, Alex?
Yes, absolutely correct. Yeah.
So that's just like my prototype Orion editor that is participating in live edit change events. It is an additional plugin is doing the same for Orion and pushing back those changes into the editor buffer.
Right.
And listening to those changes. Which
Yeah.
I think is totally cool, because it's in the end you would have these kind of, if you would like to follow this model with these client-side only thing, you do not need to change the server side at all. So you could run Orion Node, or you could run Orion Hub, or you could use whatever you want. You just would need to add your Orion client plugin, and then you would have immediate access to all the projects that are shared in Flux, and you would get these Java reconciling, blah 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 things for your Java code.
Right, but if so that's. But then, if a change does get made server side, then that's not participating in the synchronization. Like if you're on the node implementation, you're running npm, or you run something on the server side, that client side plugin is not aware of it right now.
Yeah, but from what I understood is correct, I think. But from what I understood is, but I'm not familiar enough with it. If you have different file system made plugins for Orion, it is so the file system plugin that we implement, it has nothing to do with the server side workspace, and is not communicating with that, and is not showing the same files or whatever. So to me it sounded like it's totally different. Like if you would mount a different file system from somewhere else in the world and just show that in the Orion client, or is the idea behind the file system plugins for Orion that you can have different file system plugins for Orion, but they all access the same workspace data on the server?
No, they're really, if you plug into the Orion, if you create a plugin on the client side and introduce a file system, there might be a server behind that, but it might not be the same server that everything else is coming from. So there's no from the point of view of the server that is serving up the actual Orion UI from, won't even know about that file system plugin, won't know about any changes they made in it, and that's right. Fine for doing editing. But let's say you're doing some kind of you have some tool that you want to operate against the files that run server side, right? Like if you're doing some static analysis or a build or something that doesn't run client side, then it won't even know about that it won't even know about that file system.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it's just somewhat limited. Like it's good for certain scenarios. It certainly supports editing, but it won't necessarily support the complete set of tools that your server has, right?
Yeah, it would. As far as I know, since it doesn't integrate at all with the Orion server side, it's totally disconnected from that. Yeah, that's what I understand as well.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just for us. It was just a let's try this file system API thing for the client and see how far we can get to experiment a little bit in this area and to see what's possible to do as a kind of a first step. Right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then I think the live edit stuff is separate from that. I mean that is regardless of where your file system is, the live edit stuff is a separate thing. And if there's I saw there was a patch to the Orion client, so if there's something we can add into the Orion editor to support that better, we can definitely do that.
That would be awesome if you guys could take a look at that, because that would allow us to use this live edit as well as our file system plugin to be plugged into the default Orion thing. Right at the moment, you have to serve your own Orion client, the patched one, right, which is tedious to set up. If that's in the master code base, that would be awesome. In some whatever works for you. As far as I understood, Alex, it's kind of a hacky solution at the moment. So we wonder what you guys would how you guys would solve that or change it or whatever. But having something that would allow us to do these kind of live changes, that would be great.
Right. Sure. Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that.
Cool. That's great. Any more questions? Any more open issues for this call? Otherwise, I think my follow-up to-do items are clear. Any additional questions, issues, topics?
No, I guess it's okay for us. Thanks a lot for your time, for the discussion, and also for explanation. It was very interesting. So we will dig into your pointers and various links.
Cool. Great.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
And for looking very much forward to the collaboration with you guys to work on this syncing mechanism. Would be great. Cool.
Cool. Awesome.
I will publish the video on YouTube for anybody who's interested in watching the recording. Hope that's fine with all of you.
Okay.
Anybody who has concerns with sharing this session?
No, it's okay.
No. Okay.
Okay. That's great. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.